It's time. Time to pick each conference championship game, the spread, and the total for the AFC and NFC championship games. The Broncos and Patriots, the Rams and Seahawks. If you're ready for my pick against the spread, my pick for the over-under in each of the games this Sunday, you know what to do. Gronk, spike the like button, and don't be a jabroni. Subscribe to the channel for the rest of my NFL best bets, including Super Bowl 60. If you're curious, Mitch, where can I get your bets that you make with your YouTube money? Well, you can find those on my Patreon. It's $5 a month. You can support me as a creator, and you can also get all my bets every single week of the NFL season, including a bunch of bets that I'll have for Super Bowl 60. So make sure to check that out. Link in the description. Also, the pinned comment in the comment section below. By the way, comment your opinion on these games. Comment what your best bet is. Comment your spread pick, your total pick for the AFC and NFC championship games. Where I want to kick this off, where I want to begin, is I want to begin in reverse order. If you guys also are unaware, I already broke these games down in quite depth, like really deep, on my other channel, my original channel, The Bottom Line View. Now, on that channel, it's more of an NFL channel, so I cover it from more of a even perspective. On Money Mitch here, I'm trying to convince you of the argument for why I believe in the side that I'm taking. So this is more centered around one side, like the one team I like, the over or the under, and why that's going to happen. If you're curious about the even approach, you can head over to the Bottom Line View, where I do break down these games in a different perspective, in a different way. I also made videos about each of the teams that I think will win the conference championship games and why I believe that. If you want to go check that out, the Bottom Line View is the place to go. But I want to begin with the NFC Championship and go in reverse order, just because it's a little bit different for me to look at it that way. This is going to be the main event. This is the main game. And I think that everyone else is kind of starting with the Patriots and the Broncos. So I want to switch it up a little bit. And straight up, my picks right now are going to be the Los Angeles Rams to win this game. So I like the 2.5. I'd prefer a 3. The spread probably won't be the way that I would bet the Rams. I would look at the money line. I think there are also win margin bets that can really get the most out of a Rams victory here, which I'll probably break down on my last minute best bets video of the week. Make sure to check that video out for the confirmed selection of what I will actually be playing in this game. And of course, Patreon, go check that out for everything that I'm actually betting in this game. But I do like the Rams to win. I do like the Rams to pull off the upset. And this is why. And then we'll get to the total, okay? So first of all, let's just put it at a base level. These teams have been very, very even in their first 2 matchups. They split both games 1-1. Each team won the game at home. Seattle is at home for this game. Now, the Rams have the playoff experience. The Rams have been to a Super Bowl. Stafford, McVay. The Seahawks are at home. I think that kind of evens it out, right? Both teams have basically gone shot for shot. The Rams have scored 58 points in these meetings. The Seahawks have scored 57. The Rams have 830 yards. The Seahawks have 829. It's been that dead even. In fact, in the first game when Seattle lost, they outgained the Rams. They out first down the Rams. They outpossessed the Rams. But what was the difference? 4 turnovers by Sam Darnold. 4 interceptions. In game 2, the Rams lost despite being up 16 points in the fourth quarter. They outpossessed the Seahawks. They outgained the Seahawks by 166 yards, and they won the turnover battle. The one common occurrence in these games has been that LA has won the turnover battle 7-1. That has been egregious in the favor of the Rams. Now, one way you could look at that is if the Seahawks do a better job of protecting the football, they're probably going to win this game. They already won one of them, right? And the other way to look at it is The Rams defense forces mistakes from Sam Darnold because most of these turnovers have come from Sam Darnold himself. And that is the game to me. The game to me is which quarterback can have more success against these defenses. Seattle is the number one scoring defense in football. The Rams are the number one scoring offense. The Rams have a kind of mediocre defense. The Seahawks have kind of a mediocre offense. It's kind of like a strength on strength versus a mid versus mid, if you look at it that way. And what I've seen from Stafford is that despite his struggles against Carolina and Chicago, I didn't think he played great in either game. I honestly didn't think Sean McVay coached all that well or called plays all that well or schemed all that well against either team. I honestly didn't think he had a great game plan against Chicago, especially in that game last week. I thought they were far too pass heavy in the snow. I thought Stafford struggled against the blitz, and I thought they ran really well and they didn't run enough. But this is a matchup league. And when it comes to Matthew Stafford facing Mike Macdonald, as good as he is, the best defensive mind in football, Seattle probably the second best defense in the NFL this year behind only Houston, arguably the best, definitely the best in the NFC. Stafford has thrown for 1,179 yards, 10 touchdowns to only 1 interception in 4 matchups against Mike Macdonald. That includes a matchup in 2023 where Macdonald had the number 1 defense in Baltimore. Stafford was able to throw for 294, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, a 103 passer rating. That includes the Rams going on the road to Seattle last year and winning 26-20 in an overtime game. That includes the game where Stafford threw 400 plus yards last time they played. The only mediocre showing statistically that Stafford had was the game where they led 14-3 at home earlier this year that they won, where Darnold threw 4 interceptions. So it's kind of like a game script thing. But Stafford overall has been able to digest the Seahawks defense, has been able to rip the rock all around the field, and has been able to execute at a high level with a lot of explosive plays. And I think a big part of this is that Stafford is one of the more experienced quarterbacks in football. He can read coverages extremely well. And I think he has a really good feel for pre-snap. So I think that's part of it. I think the other part is that the Seahawks don't really blitz. So you kind of know it's always going to be a 4-man rush. They play a lot of zone. And Stafford is good at picking apart zone because he has great eyes. The scheme for McVay is very, very calculated. And he's very good at throwing into those windows. And then the other point is Puka Nacua, who's been kind of unstoppable. Looking back at that Ravens game a couple of years ago, he was great. And then you look at Puka Nacua last game, 225 yards, 2 touchdowns. Even in the first game, he still put up 75 yards on only 7 catches. They didn't really need him to play that well in that game because they were up. But that's another thing, is that Stafford and the Rams have had the lead in both games. And I think that's essential to this game as well. 14-3 in game 1, and then also they were up by 16 in the fourth quarter in the second game. And the only reason Seattle really came back was because of Rashid Shaheed's punt return. If that punt return doesn't happen, the Rams still win that game. 30-14 was the score with 8 minutes left. If there's no punt return with 8 minutes left and Seattle even has to drive and take like 2-3 minutes off the clock, the game's probably over. That also includes a 2-point conversion by Seattle, which was the flukiest I've ever seen in my life. Go back and watch it. But the Rams also missed a field goal in that game from only 48 yards. They scored a touchdown in overtime, but then the Seahawks responded with a 2-point conversion. So it wasn't like Seattle really figured out the Rams offense during that game. In fact, they got shredded more than they've been shredded all season. So this might be a matchup where Seattle just struggles a little bit against Stafford, against Nacua, against a strong pass protection unit of the Rams, who have not allowed Stafford to be sacked in the 3 meetings that Seattle has played the Rams with Matthew Stafford. They played Jimmy Garoppolo once at the end of the season last year. But in the 3 meetings against Stafford, 0 sacks. So the key to me is Stafford against Mike Macdonald, and then Sam Darnold against Chris Shula. And clearly, as good as the Seahawks defense is, Stafford has had success. Now, on the flip side, the Rams are a bit susceptible, but the Rams have had overwhelming success against Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold has 2 touchdowns and 6 interceptions against this defense this season, okay? And you look at how they are structured to hurt Sam Darnold. They are 6th lowest in blitz rate, so they don't send a lot of extra defenders at the quarterback. But they do operate with the most stunts on the defensive front in the NFL. That's effective at pushing Sam Darnold off his spot and Sam can be antsy and a little uncoordinated with his feet, which causes inaccuracies and hesitations. They also utilize a lot of safety rotation, a lot of heavy zone, a lot of too high structures, which takes away the explosive downfield pass. And they do a lot of simulated pressure, the highest rate of simulated pressure, which means they're dropping a guy and sending another and sending some sort of blitz that's also calculated to bring 4 players. Also at the same time, it's a lot of like who's coming, who's going, where's this guy coming from? So the Rams do a really good job of confusing Sam Darnold, rotating their coverage, and I think especially in that second game, driving downhill. And we even saw this against Chicago on those crossing routes where they picked off Caleb Williams 3 times in that game. So this isn't a fluke that they could only achieve against Sam Darnold. And Sam Darnold hasn't exactly been impressive over the last couple of games. He is kind of banged up. He only threw for 115 yards against San Francisco. He really didn't have to participate. So the reason I bring all this up, the Rams can score against Seattle. That's been evident, right? That was especially evident last game. Stafford has played well against Seattle, which is not something that typically happens. This forces Seattle out of a game script where they're comfortable, where they can run the ball, they can get ahead, and they can unleash their pass rush and their great crowd advantage. They've played from behind in every game. The Sam Darnold, when playing from behind, has to be a drop back quarterback instead of a play action quarterback. Why is that important? Well, Sam Darnold is first in PFF grade with play action. 15 big time throws, 4 turnover worthy plays, 14 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. But he is 24th in grade with no play action, with 16 big time throws to 15 turnover worthy plays, 12 touchdowns to 9 interceptions, and his yards per attempt dips 4 yards from 11 to 7. So Sam is a drop back quarterback that is average. But as a play action quarterback, given his deep ball and when he can throw explosive plays, he's really good at it. He's really good as a shot quarterback from under center. But when he's in the gun and he has to process a defense and he has to operate from that vantage point, he isn't as good. So those are some main points there, the quarterback advantage and disadvantage. I think the Rams have proven they can get pressure on Sam Darnold. 13 sacks against Sam Darnold in the last 3 meetings, including the game that he played in the playoffs against the Rams in the wild card round as a Viking. 13 sacks. They sacked him 9 times in that game. They sacked him 4 times the last time they played. Stafford hasn't been sacked or touched. Pressure is critical in playoff games. Dotson didn't play last time for the Los Angeles Rams, which I think really hurt their ability to run the ball, but it also hurts their pass protection. I mean, we've seen that in other games like the Atlanta game where Stafford was pressured more than usual. So Dotson is back. Adams didn't play in the second game, so that's another weapon to utilize on the perimeter. And then Quentin Lake, their best defensive back for the Rams, didn't play. And that also enabled Kenneth Walker to have a big day, especially on the edges of the defense. And if the Rams can slow down Kenneth Walker, I think they'll be in pretty good shape. Walker did have a 55-yard run in that second game, which set him off for 9 yards per carry, over 100 yards on 11 carries. But if you take that 55-yarder out, it was just 4.5 on average. In the first game, he ran for only 4.2 on 16 attempts for 67 yards when Quentin Lake was playing. So the run defense for the Rams has been fairly solid against Kenneth Walker outside of really one play. Now, the Rams' run defense overall is second in PFF run grade. They're really good at run stop win rate, with Verse and Young being in the top 3 each. Tyler Davis is 4th on the interior. They're first in run stop win rate also, according to ESPN. Now, they're only 19th in yards per attempt, but they are a top 10 overall run D on the year, and they held Swift and Monongai to 2.8 yards per carry and 4 yards per carry each. So pretty good day against a really good run offense last week. Now, a lot of people would say that the Seahawks have gotten a lot better in that category. They fixed their run game down the stretch, but I had to go back and look at that because I really feel like it was just about San Francisco. So against San Francisco, who they've played consecutively and built up their reputation against the last 2 weeks of being the best team in football, I'm not sure if that's accurate, because against San Francisco, they ran for 180 and 175 yards, which is awesome, and they're very efficient, very effective. San Francisco, though, did take away the pass game of Sam Darnold for the most part, and they kind of forced Seattle to run the ball, but it was very effective. And I think San Francisco just kind of chose that we were going to take our chances with the run and kind of like not allow big plays down the field. So that's what happened, is basically San Fran's defensive line and linebackers couldn't compete with Seattle's run game. But if you look at it otherwise, yes, they did run for 171 total yards against the Rams the last time they played. But as I said, if you kind of strip away that 55-yard run, it's like it wasn't a big game. You know, like 20 carries for 132 yards in game 2 by the running backs. That's a pretty good game. That includes the 55-yard run. It's not an amazing game, I would say. Rashid Shaheed had a long run in that game as well. It's like a 30-yard reverse. Against Carolina, they had 33 running back carries for 161 yards. That's a lot of carries to get to 160 yards. So they've been better, but I wouldn't say that it's been great. You know what I'm saying? And the Rams are certainly the best defense against the run that they've played compared to San Francisco or Carolina, in my opinion. Okay, so I don't know if Seattle's run game is really good enough to win them this game and control the game the way that maybe some people are saying. I think this game's still going to come down to Sam Darnold's ability to make good decisions, to be able to be decisive on early downs, and to be able to be effective on third down. Now, if the Rams effectively do stop the run, that is where the Rams will certainly win this game, because the Seattle Seahawks offense is 32nd in third down and long. 3rd and 7+, they are dead last in the NFL. 32nd in conversion rate, 16.4%. So if the Rams can stop the run, which for most of the year they've been able to do, if the Rams do not F up on special teams, where they had a punt blocked against Carolina, they lost games against the Niners and the Eagles arguably because of special teams. They fired their special teams coordinator after the last Seahawks game because Rashid Shaheed returned that kick, and that was massive. Mevis missed a field goal. So those are two areas where I feel like if the Rams are not egregiously awful on special teams, they don't get totally outplayed, and as long as they do a decent job against the run, they are a far better team in the pass department here. Because I think Stafford is far better than Darnold. And I think the drop-back game of the Rams is far better than Seattle's. And I think even with Seattle's good pass defense and their ability to rush 4, they have not proven against Stafford that they can do it, while the Rams have proven they can do it against Darnold. So there's part of that. And then you look at the Rams, like they've committed the fewest penalties this season. So they're really good with penalties. They don't commit turnovers. They force turnovers. They don't allow rushing touchdowns in the red zone, which means Sam Darnold needs to throw the ball into the end zone for scores. That's something that I'll take my chances on because Sam isn't the best red zone quarterback. So overall, when breaking down this game, also Puka's been better than JSN overall in these matchups, although JSN has been pretty good, 105 yards, 96 yards. And then you look at the injuries. So I think something that's going under the radar is the fact that Seattle could be missing a bunch of their tackles. So Charles Cross has not participated at practice. He could play this week, but it's not 100% confirmed. Josh Jones, their other tackle, or their backup left tackle, has not participated. Amari Knight also has not participated. So 3 of their tackles that could be rather replacing Charles Cross or providing depth, they may or may not be playing. So that's something to pay attention to with Seattle's offensive line. I also think just generally the Rams have a better offensive line. And the Rams with Kobe Turner, Braden Fisk on the interior, I think they can get some penetration on Sam Darnold to cause him to be uncomfortable in the pocket. Unlike San Francisco, who has literally no pass rush. Literally the worst pass rush in football. That being said, the one area that makes me nervous is that Stafford and McVay have not been dialed in the last couple weeks. They've still won. They've still survived. They're not playing their best ball. It does appear Seattle is. But again, the appearance has been made through their ability to dominate San Francisco and no other team. So I wonder how much of it is just the matchup against San Francisco rather than really like overall how good is this team? You know what I'm saying? I think for a majority of the year, I believe that the Rams have been better. I did pick Seattle to beat the Rams in the second game. I was right about that, but looking back, I was very nervous because I bet on Seattle, and I thought they got outplayed. And the only reason they really won is because of a fluky 2-point and because of the punt return. And Darnold still played poorly. I mean, again, just to underline this, guys, Sam Darnold against the Rams. 4 interceptions in the first game, 45 passer rating. The second game, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, 4 sacks. And then last year as a Viking, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, 77 rating, 9 sacks. That's not good. Chris Shula's had the advantage. So to me, I like the Rams as the dog to pull off the upset. The total is tricky at 46.5. It continues to trend down. It's not my favorite bet. It certainly wouldn't be a best bet. I've been going back and forth with this. Earlier in the week, I wanted to kind of say the under. The number keeps dipping though. And I do feel like 46.5 is almost becoming a little bit too low. Like 47.5 is pretty key. Because like 27-20, for example. This game very easily could be 24-21, 24-20, 23-20. But it could also be like 27-24, 27-23, 28-24, 24-23. So it's going to be right around this number. I think this is a really good number. So I don't really have a lean either way. But if I had to choose, the gut says... It says over because of the way that the Rams have moved the ball against Seattle and how that may force Seattle to open their offense up. Like, I think it will be... It's interesting because the first game was 21-19, and that was under. But the second game was 38-37, and that was clearly an over. So it's going to be like in between. I kind of think like 27-23, somewhere in that range is very possible. So I'm typically an under guy, especially with a defense as good as Seattle that's at home. And I do believe in the Rams defense in this game. So a lot of me wants to say the under. But I do think that we're going to get, some turnovers that could unexpectedly push this over. The special teams is always a factor here. I think explosive plays from both offenses are frequent. Whether it be long runs by Kenneth Walker, big plays by Puka, JSN, etc., Rashid Shaheed, Devontae Adams. Like, these teams might have a game where in the first half it might be extremely low scoring and then they pop off in the third or fourth quarter. So it's kind of a hard one to really call from a total perspective. But I would lean over now that it's dipped under 47. I think I would lean over 46.5. Okay? So, and again, guys, I don't really have like a huge argument here other than what I've already said. Like, I think the fact that Stafford is, so good against Mike McDonald, he's going to put points up. Like, I think they're going to put up 24-27, 28 points. I don't think they'll quite get to 30. And then it's on Seattle to be able to get to 20. And I think that's going to probably happen against a Rams defense that I like and has played well against Sam. But even when Sam has played this poorly, right? Last game, they scored 30 offensive points. In the last time out, they scored 19 despite 4 interceptions. So if they get to 19 and the Rams get to 27, that's around 46. So I kind of think the over is the right play. And then we go to the AFC side, which is the first game on Sunday. 42.5 is the total. This actually continues to tick up, which I hate because I wanted to bet the over. And then New England minus 4.5 is the spread. This is ticking down or going down towards the Denver Broncos. It was 5.5. It was 5. I don't think there was ever a 6. I think people were trying to wait to see if there was a 6. It's ticked down to 4.5. So when it comes to who's going to win this game, I feel pretty strongly about the Patriots. Of course, the Patriots are my team, and as I've always said throughout the season, take it with a grain of salt. But as I've been, I've been pretty accurate about the Patriots all year, and I've continued to say they're probably the most underrated team in football. And truthfully, I believe that the Patriots are going to be a screaming underdog in the Super Bowl. And once they get to the Super Bowl, I think a lot of people will be betting on the other team, and that's fine. I think the Patriots are the most well-rounded team there is in football when we combine quarterback, when we combine coach, when we combine offense, defense. I think they're the most well-rounded team. I don't think they have quite the offense of the Rams. I don't think they have quite the defense of the Seahawks, but I think they're more well-rounded than either one. I think they're certainly more well-rounded than the Denver Broncos with their backup quarterback. Now, a couple things to understand about the Patriots. They're 8-0 on the road this year, so going to Denver I don't think scares them. In fact, all their losses have been at home. They've had some of their best performances, including beating the Bills on Sunday night in Buffalo, which is a place that no one really beats Buffalo. They beat the Baltimore Ravens coming from behind in a game that they had to win. They beat the Bucs. So some of their tougher games this year have been on the road, and they were able to achieve that. Now, they've also, I think, There's this thing about the Patriots right now, this narrative where they faced a really easy schedule. And even in the playoffs, they faced some very exposable offenses, like CJ Stroud's Texans, Justin Herbert's Chargers. Both teams have very weak offensive lines, and I tend to agree with that. But what makes the Broncos all that different? They're playing Jarrett Stidham, who is not a starting quarterback for a reason, despite having some level of talent. I actually like Jarrett Stidham. I think he's a good backup. He has a pretty good arm. He's a decent decision maker. He's fairly accurate. He was actually really good in the preseason, first in EPA per play for what it's worth. He's started only 4 games, though. He hasn't played since 2023. And Josh McDaniels knows him better than any coach in football outside of maybe Sean Payton. Josh McDaniels drafted him in New England, developed him in New England, and then he also brought him to the Raiders to be his backup and maybe even starter. And in neither time did he actually make him the starter. So that's interesting, where he liked him enough to draft him, take him in New England. They flirted with the possibility of him starting over Cam Newton. It didn't happen. Then they let him, then he left to go to the Raiders when McDaniels left, and McDaniels didn't start him. So kind of interesting. Just my opinion, kind of interesting though. But I do think Stidham can make some downfield throws. I think he's comfortable in the pocket. I think he can make some nice intermediate passes. I don't think he's quite the twitchy athlete that Bo Nix is. He's certainly not the runner that Bo Nix is. He certainly isn't creative as Bo Nix. Can't make the plays outside the pocket that Bo Nix can make. I would worry about the sack percentage going way up for Jarrett Stidham compared to Bo Nix. Bo Nix's best attribute is his ability to escape sacks and not take negative plays and not force the ball. And Stidham, I think, will do that a little bit more. I'd also say that he just hasn't played at an NFL speed outside of the preseason. This is playoff speed, so it's going to be drastically different stepping into an AFC Championship game, even at home, okay? So, again, going back to that narrative, New England has not played great offensive lines, great offenses. They have played solid quarterbacks. Herbert's very good, but I think the biggest thing is, Denver has a better offensive line. The weapons are probably about the same in Denver as they are in, let's say, Los Angeles. Denver's also a weird team because they're kind of a one-dimensional offense that isn't really a great passing team. They led the NFL in passing attempts. Bo Nix led the NFL in passing attempts. Last week, they played the second worst rushing offense in football, and they still threw the ball way more than they ran it. In fact, Bo Nix led the team in rushing. So that is highly questionable when you're facing a defense that is getting after quarterbacks the way that New England is. They have 72 pressures in 2 games so far. And yes, Denver is a lot better up front on the offensive line than Houston or LA, but New England has proven they can get pressure. And if you can't run the ball at all, and you have no semblance of balance with your backup quarterback, well, there's going to be sacks, turnovers, mistakes, and definitely stops for the Patriots. So you look at this Broncos run game. They ran 10 times for only 41 yards against the Bills on the ground with their running backs. They, as a run game overall, are 15th in yards per attempt, 26th in EPA since week 10. That's not very impressive. And when you look at, quick game for the Broncos throwing the ball. Throwing behind the line of scrimmage, New England is 5th in defending those passes. They're a very good tackling team because of their linebackers, and they hit hard. They don't miss a lot of tackles. You watch them, and that was evident against the Chargers. That was evident against the Texans, how hard they hit, how much they make you pay. And the Broncos' offense is so based on yards after catch, manufactured touches, quick RPOs, quick screens. And a lot of that comes down to Bo Nix's skill set. How much will he have to shift now that Jarrett Stidham's the quarterback? Jarrett Stidham's much more of a pocket quarterback, and he's not quite as quick-minded as Bo Nix is with those quick throws and quick triggers. So if it's a tick slower on those plays, New England's going to be all over it. And unlike Buffalo, New England can hit. New England is aggressive defensively. And I think New England can take it to an offense, unlike a team like the Bills, where the Bills are a passive defense. They play a lot of zone. They don't blitz a lot. They're not good against the run. So they're kind of relying on the offense to mess up. New England, on the other hand, is an extremely aggressive defense at this rate. They might be the most aggressive defense there is in the league, which means they dictate to their opposition and you have to beat them at their game, right? So you look at New England and how they've been performing. You look at how they're blitzing. They're second in blitz rate since their bye week, which is week 14. They're second in blitz rate. They're third in EPA when they blitz. They're first in explosive play rate allowed, which is in a good way. They're the best team at not allowing explosives while blitzing. They only allow a 27.7 success rate, which is second best in the league when they blitz. They have a 3.2 net yards per attempt when they blitz. And they're the most blitz-happy team on third and fourth down. So the formula here, despite a great offensive line for Denver, that has been pretty damn good at blocking, especially with their starting center. We're not sure if Wattenberg will be back quite yet or not. That's a big question mark. If Wattenberg is out, Denver could be on their third center, which is very concerning, with a backup center and a backup quarterback against a very good pressure defense. That's very concerning. But if they do have Wattenberg, let's say they do, still, New England is going to blitz, and New England's going to heat up Stidham and force him to make quick throws, and they're going to force the Broncos to win their matchups on the outside against the best cornerback trio in football, Christian Gonzalez, Carlton Davis, and Marcus Jones. And yes, Mims, Franklin, Sutton, they can get vertical, they can make plays. We saw that against Buffalo. But New England has a better secondary than Buffalo, especially when it comes to playing man-to-man, and they're not scared to dictate to the opposition. So I just don't see how the Broncos consistently generate offense in this game. I think maybe early in this game, they have some trickery. They got some wide receiver reverses, some cool screens, some play action concepts. They find a couple things that can get the Patriots with some good matchups. And Jarrett Stidham, you never know. It's a backup quarterback. Surprise is always a factor, especially with a more talented backup and how he differs from Bo Nix in some of the areas he might be better than Bo Nix. But New England is so good against the run. I mean, 2 yards per carry so far allowed in the playoffs is ridiculous to running backs. So there's no balance for the Broncos. When we get to passing downs, New England is going to be able to pressure Jarrett Stidham with blitzes. And they're really good in man coverage. So it's going to be hard for Denver to be able to separate. So overall, I just see New England being able to get a lot of havoc and put Jarrett Stidham in a lot of uncomfortable positions. And it's not even really going to be his fault. I think it's more so that the Broncos don't have the balance necessary to have a backup. Because I don't think you want Jarrett Stidham throwing the ball 40 times like Bo Nix did against Buffalo. And it's not like Bo Nix was really that great outside of a couple of big plays in the game. He was good in the fourth quarter, but I mean, and that's their starter. So just throwing that out there. Then you look at the other side of the ball, and honestly, I think this is the worst defense that New England has faced in the playoffs. And the Broncos have been built up to be this juggernaut defense. They're like second in a lot of metrics throughout the entire season. But when you look at them since week 4, they're the 10th best defense in football. Meanwhile, the Chargers are 6th, and the Texans are 1st, and the Patriots are 4th. So that's interesting. But Denver has been pretty poor against tight ends. Overall, 9th most yards allowed to tight ends. They allowed 9 catches, 115 yards, and a touchdown to Buffalo. That's Hunter Henry. That's Austin Hooper. These two guys could, I think, have pretty good games. When you're looking at, since, I think there was a stat I had here. Since week 10, they are 29th against tight ends in EPA. So 9th in yards overall, 29th since week 10 in EPA. So tight ends could be a factor. You're also looking at where I think the Broncos differ from teams like the Texans. The Texans almost have no flaws, which makes them like a all-time good defense. Meanwhile, New England can kind of pick on a couple players on Denver. I think Kufanga is gettable against tight ends. I think their linebackers are gettable with running backs or tight ends. That, Singleton, for example, Stevenson out of the backfield, Henry or Hooper, and then looking at Riley Moss and targeting Riley Moss. I think McMillan in the slot is okay, but I think he can be had with Diggs or Douglas in the slot. And vertical shot plays to the slot like Diggs or Douglas can definitely create some big plays. And May is better than anyone against the things that the Broncos do really well. So the Broncos, they're aggressive like New England, right? They like to send blitzes despite having a very good front four. Drake May is first in QBR, first in yards per attempt, first in EPA against the blitz. He's had 15 touchdowns to 0 interceptions against 5 or more rushers this year. And then when you look at man coverage, which the Broncos also feature, so they're a lot like New England in this way. They're second most in man coverage, right? But Drake May is first in yards per attempt against man coverage. He's third in touchdowns against man coverage. He's second in rushing grade in man coverage. The Broncos are also bottom 5 since week 10 against scrambling quarterbacks. Drake May can run. And then you look at, okay, yeah, Drake May does make more mistakes against man because he has to hold the ball. And the best possibility here for Denver to win is their pressure, but their ability to pressure without blitzing. Because if they do blitz, New England has underrated receivers, and New England's going to win some matchups. No matter how good those corners are, and I do think Kayshon Boutte showed that against Derek Stingley. I think Stephon Diggs can make plays. I think Henry can make plays, as we just brought up. Stevenson could slip out and make plays. And, we could have Mac Hollins back. The Patriots could this week. So I think there's just a lot of ways that New England can attack Denver compared to the Chargers or the Texans. The Texans especially, where the Texans were able to rush 4 constantly, get pressure with their edges, and then also, be able to cover and kind of smother the receiving core. But still, New England scored 21 offensive points with the snow. On the other side of things, with the Chargers, they got some red zone stops, which really kind of kept the score down. And New England was so good defensively that they didn't really have to try on offense in the second half. But when you look at the Chargers structurally, how I think they differ from Denver, they play a lot of zone, they play a lot of too high, they don't blitz a lot, and they were good against the run in that game overall, well enough to where they couldn't get run over. And I think that is structurally better against Drake May because it doesn't allow him to hit big plays. And May is the best big play quarterback in football. And Denver does force you to make those big plays, and Drake uniquely is set up to make those. So I think structurally, Denver is the easiest defense that Drake has played. Now, it is the toughest environment. He's playing on the road at Mile High in the altitude, but it will be sunny. It will not be snowing, which is another factor where Drake has had some slippery football in his hands, 6 fumbles through 2 games because of the weather in New England, and he has small hands. If Drake can avoid fumbles, even if he gets sacked 4 or 5 times, he's proven he can overcome that because he doesn't take sacks where he loses like 10 yards. It's usually like 1 or 2. He's good at that. But I think when it comes to fumbles, if he can avoid turnovers, the Patriots should 100% win this game and cover. If New England has 0 turnovers or even 1, I think that they win this game by more than a touchdown. Because I just don't see how Denver keeps up with the Patriots. I think New England is going to score 24 to 30 points. And I think Denver is probably going to score around 17, maybe 20. And that's on their best day. I mean, New England has only allowed so far in the playoffs, 14? What they allowed to the Texans, 13 points, 14 points, 16 points, somewhere in that range. And that was with the Texans defense being absurdly good. And then on top of that, the Chargers only scored 6. So I think 17 is probably around what Denver's going to get. And I think New England's probably going to have 27-30. So I think they're going to cover this game. I definitely do. So New England -4.5. And then looking at my score, I feel decent about the over. I think that this is going to hit around 44 points. 27-17. Somewhere around there. Because I think that Sean Payton is good enough to scheme some plays for Jarrett Stidham. I think Jarrett Stidham, especially in a first start where teams might not know exactly what to do against him, although McDaniels knows him well, I kind of feel like there'll be some surprise factor. Denver's going to be really motivated. They got the crowd advantage. They're underdogs. No one believes in them. There's part of that factor. I could see them getting some scores early because they might take New England by surprise. I do think that New England will be aggressive, so that will leave some shot plays to be had for Denver. And I think Sean Payton has been very calculated and good with his decision-making when to call those plays. And Sean Payton's just a better offensive play caller and mind than either of the Chargers or Texans have. The Broncos have a drastically better offensive line than either of those teams have. So I just think there will be more protection for the quarterback. I think there'll be more opportunities for Denver to make plays in this game down the field. And I think on the flip side, this will be the best Drake May game that we've gotten so far, where he could actually put up 30 on this team. Because when you really look at it, Denver defensively has not really been all that great down the stretch. I'm actually just going to look up their EPA numbers because I'm not 100% sure. But I know since week 4, since week 4, as I brought up, they're barely a top 10 defense. Because a lot of people look at them as like a top 5 defense, right? And I kind of proved that wrong. But since I want to say since like week 10, they're probably more of like a mediocre defense. Just on how they've performed. You look at, they allowed 26 to Washington. They allowed 34 to Jacksonville. They allowed 30 to Buffalo despite 5 turnovers, right? They allowed, 26 to the Packers. So I kind of think that they haven't been as good over the back half of the season. And I'm just going to look at it from week 10, including the playoffs. Where do they rank in EPA per play? I'm going to do that right now, just to kind of prove that I'm right here and I'm not making it up. So Denver, since week 10, is 11th in EPA per play. New England is 8th. The Chargers are 6th. The Texans are 3rd since week 10. Since week 12. Let's go week 12. Is there any difference? I'm just kind of having fun here. Guys, if you haven't already, Gronk spiked the like button. Since week 12, Denver is 14th. New England is 7th. So there is an argument that New England has the better quarterback, the better offense, and the better defense in this game. And I think that's enough to pick them in this game and stop doubting them. All right, there it is, guys. Thank you for watching. It's Mitch. Gronk spiked the like button. Subscribe if you haven't. Best bets for the conference championship games coming very, very soon if it hasn't already. So make sure to check that out. And last minute best bets will be available on Saturday. So check it out there, guys. I'll see you later. Peace.